Hi everyone and welcome to another astrology update. Now in today's update, in the first part, I'm going to be speaking about today's sky and the most relevant planetary positions which are heavily affecting us right now. And the second part is an oracle guidance where I have asked the universe to give us an advice how to navigate through this period. Now, today we have a very active sky, and this isn't just about the energies of the present moment, but we also had a very potent penumbral lunar eclipse taking place in the sign of Capricorn, either on the 4th or 5th of July, depending on where you are on the planet. So, this kind of means either Sunday or Saturday, and the energies of it, the eclipse are still very strong, are still lingering. They are basically dissolving in matter, trying to manifest. So this can awaken all our senses, especially, our intuition, our instincts, our emotions, because basically this is how our consciousness reacts to the energies of the eclipse, where you know that the veil between the worlds is that much thinner. So, certain energies that don't really belong in our world, especially in the world of matter, can be here, and there's nothing we can do about this. But this isn't really the biggest problem, if we can call it a problem, because we have Saturn retrograding back into the anaretic degree of its home sign of Capricorn, and now this is really big, regardless of what our archetype is, regardless of what personality type we embody, because Saturn is all about limitations, restrictions, the density of matter. It is the power which allows what should or what shouldn't manifest in the world of matter, and in its home sign of Capricorn, it is that much more stronger, and an anaretic degree, 29 degrees of a sign, is what represents a karmic culmination. So any planet there in this degree has its symbolism greatly amplified, and usually the shadow expression of that energy is emphasized on. And Saturn is called, after all, by the ancient, the Great Malefic. So in its shadow position, it always represents temptations, limitations, the density of matter, where we simply cannot have a chance to fight off all the rules and regulations that are suffocating us, are limiting us. So in this period, we might feel all the restrictions, all the blockages, everything that stops us from advancing materially or in our careers or what we want to do in this world. We can feel all of that much heavier. And it is also karmic degree. Saturn is also responsible for manifestations. So for some people, this can be an extremely powerful karmic period of closures, of endings, of culminations, where the karmic bomb just explodes. Because on one hand we have that Saturn, and on the other hand we also have the karmic eclipse. So this is a period of a couple of days where karma is just going on haywire. It is unstoppable, uncontrollable. Whatever needs to happen has to happen. So for us personally, for the individual, this can be a very unusual, suffocating, almost weird time, because the negative, the malefic representation of Saturn is something intimidating and frightening for all of us, no matter how powerful we are, no matter how disciplined we are, and even if we actually embody the Saturnian archetype, where we are full of responsibility, duty, we uphold the laws, we're there for other people, we use our strength and our sacrifice for the greater good, and also to keep our own beings protected and safe. Well, it doesn't really matter because this energy is heavy for all of us. But the biggest problem is not really individually, because there are some people who have a lot of life experience, especially the elders, especially those people who went through a lot of hardships in their life. So they're actually kind of trained for this. But collectively, this is a totally different picture, because an aneretic Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, in its home sign, and also having Jupiter and Pluto there, so every planet symbolism is greatly amplified by that Jupiter. And even though it doesn't form a very tight conjunction with Saturn, it still expands its symbolism. So we have an extremely powerful Saturn, and especially in a retrograde position. So this really means misuse, abuse, too much power displayed by centralized, power, government, big corporations, big pharma, patriarchy, institutions, the hierarchical ladder which governs society, everything that has to do with the symbolism of Capricorn. So this is where new laws, new rules are going to be enforced. In some parts of the world, this could represent a further tightening of the social distancing rules, of the regulations with the go-with situations. While in other places, it can represent very, very desperate and maybe unwise measures to tackle the economic crisis. In other parts, it can represent simply strengthening and tightening the control and the force that the state has over its citizens. So either way, this is where the misuse of power, the abuse of power, is that much more evident. And because right now it is the authorities, it is the governors, it is the rulers, those who have to solve this problem. It falls in their duty, it falls in their responsibility. This is when they are starting to panic, when they're starting to be really afraid that there is no solution, that time is running out. Saturn is, after all, the Lord of Time. So in this period, it is not just us individuals, but humanity as a collective, and even centralized power, even institutions, when all of us are feeling that time is, from one hand, standing still, nothing is going on, nothing is moving, nothing is evolving, or what it simply isn't enough, isn't going fast enough. But on the other hand, time is also ticking, the clock is running, and if we don't find solutions very quickly, well, then we know without a shadow of a doubt that the crisis is, especially the economic part of it, and the social and political part of it, is going to be almost unsolvable. And all of us can see the pattern, how this is almost like the Great Depression, that the stage is being set for this. But Saturn, even in an erratic degree, it is our life experience, it is our powers, our influence over material reality, and wisdom, diligence, and the know-how and the lessons of the past are actually here to help us. But still, we also have Pluto and Jupiter in a tight conjunction there. So leaders are gonna fail, leaders are gonna fall, they are going to be brought to justice, because this begins a period, this opens a karmic period with trials and tribulations, especially leaders, especially the professionals who were tasked with handling this situation. And even the old corruption, the nepotism, the flaws, the old problems within centralized power are being revealed. So this aneretic Saturn makes this that much more intense, that much more unforgiving and vile. So all of us are feeling this very, very heavily. And the sky is filled with sextiles, with opportunities, with dynamism. But because of the Saturn, I'm not sure that any of us can see it, feel it, use it to our greatest good. and we also have Mars very, very close to Chiron in its home sign. So that is provoking almost our healing by opening our old wounds, by sending us into states of anxiety, into panic mode. And this is where we're living a dichotomy, because on one hand, Saturn is restricting us, the time clock is ticking, but nothing is moving. But on the other hand, Mars and Chiron together, they are, creating a sense of urgency that we need to heal, that we need to find problems, that our healing actually depends on our progress, etc. Because Mars is very, very action oriented. And at the same time, we have a square between that Mars and Mercury in the sign of Cancer, still retrograde. So that further complicates the situation, because that means emotional triggers, that means projecting our wounds and hurts and fears and insecurities onto others. That means challenging the opinions and the visions of others. So that means basically angry words of agitated Mercury and Cancer. When you're feeling anger and like an emotional turmoil, well, you're gonna speak it and make it clear to everyone instantly. And if this isn't enough, the Sun in the sign of Cancer is conjunct the fixed star Sirius. And Sirius has also expansive qualities like Jupiter. So we're also obsessed by the truth of whatever is going on in the world, because Cancer is the culture we belong in, our countries, our communities, our worlds, our family, our inner emotional worlds. It is awakening our emotional senses. It is awakening everything that is within ourselves, our intuition, our dreams, our fantasies, our wishful thinking, especially that the Sun receives a harmonious trine from Neptune retrograde in Pisces, which means dreams, whatever we desire out of the purity of our hearts. But dreams and fantasies and inspiration and spirituality and faith is absolutely wonderful. But does Saturn actually allow the manifestation of all of this? In an erratic degree, the answer is definitely, if it has to do with fears, with insecurities, with the shadowy part of emotions, then absolutely yes, in an instant. It comes flying into your life. But if it's like a big elevated hope and dream and goal, well, chances are Saturn is gonna tell you, you still need to work for it, you still need to study, you still need to reach a greater level of mastery. So that is, even spiritually, that is rather frustrating. But this is the energy that we have to work with. And fortunately, it is not gonna last for a very long time, because Saturn will ultimately move on to 28 degrees of Capricorn, and that energy is gonna be very much different. Then at the end of the week, Mercury goes direct. That is also a breath of fresh air. And then we will have a new moon in an erratic degree of Cancer later on, and that is going to be a totally different kind of intensity. That is also going to be karmic, but it might offer a solution to everything, every problem, every restriction, every limitation that we are facing in the present moment. So this isn't a very long-term energy, fortunately for all of us. But for centralized power, the government and the global situation, what is happening on the world stage, they're not out of the woods just yet, because for them, the inner turmoil, the inner crisis, the battles, the wars, the conflicts, the betrayal, the backstabbing, and also people turning against them, losing the trust of people forever and for good. Not even their official communication is taken seriously by anyone in this present moment, and many times not even by them personally. And this is how their inner wars are really, really getting out of hand. But at least from an astrological perspective, we know that this is the way it should be. There is no running away from this. And we also know that 21st December, the time of the Great Conjunction, is definitely going to offer solutions. It is going to open a totally new paradigm, a totally new worldview full of potential solutions to all of us. So that can be a very, very soothing energy, which somehow closes this dark chapter and a new chapter opens full of challenges and problems, of course, because 2021 is going to be dominated by the Saturn Uranus square, but that is a different kind of energy because that is us, all of us, both individually and collectively, working towards solutions, implementing, upgrading everything that has to do with our value systems, that has to do with the material lives, justice, equality, fairness. The symbolism of Capricorn can be reconstructed, but that will ultimately involve the battle of old ideologies, of old traditions and customs, and the new, the revolutionary, the futuristic. But before we even get there, we still have to survive the end of the summer and the very assertive autumn that we are gonna have because of Mars staying 6 months in the Hope sign, going retrograde there, and forming really, really assertive and heavy hard aspects. And then meeting his sister Eris, the female warrior, the female awakener. So we're not really out of the woods just yet. But the main message in this astrology update is that if you're feeling the restrictions, the heaviness, the density, the suffocating nature of the energetic Saturn, or for some people, this might actually enter their sphere of awareness, especially spiritual people, like feeling a massive blockage which you just don't know what it is, not being able to manifest anything, or for some people who are susceptible to this, well, they might think that an evil power is at work in their lives, because Saturn was seen by the ancients as the source of temptations, of evil, of, exposing all our weaknesses, all our shadow sides. It was basically the devil. And with a malefic Saturn, we always feel that time is against us, that time is not in our favor, but this is always an illusion. So regardless of how this energetic Saturn manifests in your life, may it be a really strong sensation of stagnation or procrastination or nothing ever moving, may it be you feeling that you're running out of time, that you couldn't just achieve progress in anything, and it's already over, your opportunities are long gone. Or if you might experience this as, an evil or unclean force working in your life, know that this energy won't last forever. And we had another taster of this before, the COVID outbreak, before Saturn entered 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I can clearly remember before the COVID outbreak, or at least before becoming official, and after it spread from China, a lot of people had weird visions, senses, anxiety, unexplainable depression, where they just felt that something really, really big is coming. So basically, Saturn retrograding back there is evoking all of that once more, and it's inviting us to tap into our wisdom of everything that we have learned, our coping skills, and of course, our attitudes, as in dignity for the self, self-respect, diligence, and responsibility, because, Saturn is retrograde. If we embody all of that, we can extend it onto other people, so it's a win-win situation. But either way, I have asked the cards to give us an advice on how to navigate through this energetic Saturn situation. And basically the first cards just expose our situations, what we feel, what we're trying to do, what we're coping with. And then the last cards are giving us the advice, what it is that we need to do. And we have the 10 of coins, and clarified by the Five of Cups. This is really symbolic because it represents the Ten of Courts. We want to invest in our futures. We would like nothing more than to work or do whatever it takes, whatever it needs to make sure that we have, stability in the future, that we have something to work with, at least materially, at least knowing that we are going to be safe, that we have a roof over our heads, that we're going to have food, and at least minor opportunities to make it financially. But the Five of Cups represents that our fears, our mistrust, our pessimistic tendencies are really growing because we are actually losing sight at the light of the end of the tunnel. And it isn't a trick of the mind, really, because this is what actually is going on in the world. Everyone's personal symbolism of the Ten of Pentacles is being severely challenged because there is nothing anymore that our minds can, attach to, grip on, for the sake of security, for the sake of feeling safe, knowing that we have a guarantee that we're safe in the future. Because even if you're someone who has like millions of euros or other currency put aside in the bank and you have a lot of investments, well, when the global economic situation starts to really, really fall, to really, really deconstruct itself, so to speak, well, what does that actually matter? It won't matter anymore. If it's famine, for example, if that is the biggest risk, well, then money won't actually do any good. And it doesn't matter, what kind of archetype we are, what our personality is, because our souls are pretty much, they function the same ways, if that makes sense. So we all feel this fear, we are all feeling this threat, this instability, this danger that awaits us. And it doesn't matter what the soul believes or not, because the threat is actually real, so it has to warn us to prepare, it has to warn us to strengthen up, because hard times may be coming. Even if it's just a month of hardship, the soul is still in duty to prepare us for this. And there's some people who do listen to their intuition, who do analyze their dreams and what they're feeling, and there are others who don't, but the soul still does its duty and warns us that danger is coming. So basically, optimism and, blind faith that everything is going to 1,000,000% okay is not really available to us, because blindly trusting that we're not going to be affected whatsoever and it won't touch our lives, now that is self-deception, that is just wishful thinking, that has nothing to do with hope and real faith, because, we cannot ignore that we are going to be in deep waters, either psychologically or materially or in any other way, because even if we do actually fall in that category where it is going to have no negative effect on our own lives, we still have family, we still have relatives, we still need to go out on the street. So, it can affect us through our empathy, through our, spirit of mercy and compassion. So either way, it's not a very optimistic time, and we cannot ignore this. So it is the truth, so we have to face it and prepare ourselves. But of course, that doesn't mean that we have to, immerse into paranoid fear and panic mode and survival mentality, because that is also a very unwise choice. Because the future is uncertain, so we have no idea what we're dealing with, really. So it would be rather silly to work ourselves up in advance. The best possible solution is to just go with the flow and not to allow our fears and our, mistrust, or for some people the disappointment, to get out of hand and to rule our lives, to rule our everyday, where we just get imprisoned into this vicious circle of fear and insecurity. And then we have the Four of Swords reversed and the Knight of Wands. And this leads to a dichotomy because on one hand, of course, that Ten of Coins is very uncertain. We no longer know what and how our material situations are going to look like in the future. But at the same time, we also feel a very strong inner call that a very important period when we have to work, when we have to do something, when we have to make choices. You know, the Knight of Wands is going out and taking action, using your power, using your skills, your talents, acting on whatever is very important to you, where you invest your energy, your focus. So basically getting things done. We also have a very powerful inner awakening, an inner call that now is the time to get things done. But the dichotomy, Saturn is limiting us right now and telling us, no, you're not doing anything in the immediate future, no matter how inspired and motivated you feel like going out and taking action. It is not the right time for this now. So many of us are confused because some people think that the best course of action is to wait, while other people think that the best course of action is to just forcefully try and break out of the limitations and do whatever it takes to achieve progress or to work on that longer term material security. But the universe tells us that this is basically just an illusionary kind of ambition and inner calling, because the core feeling, the core emotion is that we're really tired and almost sick of waiting, of being patient, of cooperating, of awaiting the next karmic moment, the next piece of the puzzle, the next wrong or right move from centralized power, the next manifestation. So this is where we just basically cannot tolerate waiting and staying in a state of inaction, inertia anymore. This is where that energetic Saturn stopping everything, but you know, it isn't like physically stopping everything. It is basically forcing everything that has to do with the world of matter, basically. So that means us humans, that means every single element in the universe to do their roles more meticulously, more precisely, more intensely than ever. And of course, when you have to invest energy into meticulosity, then you lose time, you get slower. And that is why everything in our lives seems like a blockage. But there is absolutely nothing we can do right now other than to discipline the inner Knight of Wands, telling it that we will definitely gonna take action and we will do everything in our power to make it when the right timing comes, because right now we have no choice but to stand still and process, because the karmic forces are gonna prevent us from doing everything that is not in the divine plan, in the great cosmic design anyway. And this state is also reflected by the next cards, where we have the Knight of Coins reversed and the Tower reversed. So basically this means that we're feeling, regardless from which perspective, may it be materially, may it be with our great plans, goals, desires, may it be emotionally, may it be spiritually, it doesn't matter in which area of life, but we're feeling that we're not really making progress when we should be making progress. We're feeling that we're falling off the mountain, the very steep mountain that we try to climb, that we try to do everything to make it. And the Tower reversed represents that a lot of us invested like more effort and more energy, more work, more sacrifices, you name it, than ever before in our lives, just to make it, just to be our most authentic selves and try and live life the way it feels true and authentic to us. And right now, in this present karmic moment, especially due to the eclipse and the energetic Saturn and all the rest of the planetary influences, we feel that we are actually losing, going backwards, that our progress is being lost, that we're falling off the mountain, that we're sinking, that we're going down in the rabbit hole. So each and every individual experiences this in a different manner. For some, it's the beginning of a spiritual crisis. For others, just, like an angry child who cannot have their way, so they're staying stubborn inside themselves. Others are just lost in confusion. They have no idea anymore what they're supposed to do in their lives, in their careers, in their material lives. Others are actually trying to overcome this by forced motivation, by forced ambition, by overexciting their senses to and their desires to make it. But this is where the universe is telling us through the death card that it doesn't really matter how we are experiencing it, because chances are everything that we feel in the present moment, especially the more negative side of the feelings, the fears, the insecurity, the being stuck and all of that, is absolutely normal and natural, because basically our normality, our world, our inner structures are being deconstructed, razed to the ground. A very powerful transformation is taking place in our lives. And we're actually quite fortunate, because our ancestors, when they ever experienced a massive world change like this, it was really, 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 really bad. Wars, catastrophes, crises, diseases. Of course, we have all of this even in the present moment, but the difference is that for us, let's be just totally honest with ourselves, it's much more symbolic than actually the damage part, the punishment part, the death and destruction part. We can't even compare our present moment, world change, the big moment of crisis, with, like the Second or First World War. Because if we are desperate and in fear and insecure, then imagine how our ancestors could have felt. So these feelings, this state of, restlessness, this state of anxiety is pretty natural, because our world is changing, and how are we supposed to react to that? Even our nervous system, even our consciousness needs a little bit of time and the right setup to adapt itself to this change. So in the present moment, all we can do is just accept the truth, no matter who we are. Even if we are the world's greatest magician or sorcerer or an archon or enlightened being or whatever, there are times in life when karma has to do its thing, when the divine has to implement its new design, its new structure, and that is the time when we have to stand still and just accept and try not to get in our ways and in the ways of the divine, and just wait until the change takes place, because where we're heading towards is the Nine of Pentacles. And the Nine of Pentacles is a really positive and uplifting symbol, because it represents that all of us, one way or another, are actually getting our ways. This isn't in our disadvantage. This isn't to punish us. This isn't to destroy us. This is actually quite the contrary. This is leading us where everyone gets their saying, gets their normality, gets the life that they are okay with. This is actually putting a stop to the great social inequality that has been a accepted and tolerated and almost normal and natural part of our everyday lives for a lot of years, for some people all throughout their waking existence. But the reasons for the inequality are like collective traumas and blockages that run really, really, really deeply in humanity's collective consciousness. So that means all of us individually as well. We carry the ancestral injustices in our genes basically. If you had an ancestor who was like a beggar or social injustice destroyed their lives, well, you carry their suffering, their pain in your genes. And this is why this is so very hard and heavy and taking a lot of physical time, because this is what has to stop. This is what has to end. This is what all of us are transmuting, and we're stepping into the world where I'm not saying it's gonna be perfect. I'm not gonna say that there is not gonna be social inequality and injustice and all of that. But the expression of it, if the injustice is simply an energy of unfairness, inequilibrium, and not potent enough to destroy someone's life, well then that is a massive difference. Now let me give you an example. It is totally different when you want to be a hairdresser, for example, but basically society stops you because maybe that field of expertise has already way too many really, really good and talented professionals working there. So basically, life and society guides you to find a different profession for yourself. Now that is already an injustice, because that is what you really love to do, but you couldn't. But you can adapt yourself. And it is totally different when you want to become a hairdresser, but because you come from a very, very disadvantaged family, and you are not lucky as some people to be discovered by someone, or that miraculous help heads your way, or you don't have social media to share your story and people are gonna jump to help you, maybe that leads to a road of starvation and you die there and then starving. Now that is a totally different kind of social injustice. And basically the karmic theme is the same, but the outcome is so very different because of how our society handles this. And there is a difference between like just a pain, just a disappointment, just a failure, and a failure which ends your life or drowns your whole soul into a deep sorrow where it takes you 10 lifetimes to heal it. Now that is the big difference, and that is changing. The universe no longer wants to support and hold in existence like a factory of suffering, broken dreams, broken hearts, broken fates, broken everything, where ultimately everyone will have their turn to fail and be miserable, but rather it wants to create a school, an earth school. But when, because of the unfairness, the school is not actually teaching anything positive anymore, it is actually twisting and turning souls into their most horrible versions, well then it has to intervene. And that is exactly why this change, this transformation is so very deep and more psychological than ever, because of our technology, our intellect, our evolution. We don't no longer need to live through whatever we lived through in the past, as in the world wars and that massive suffering, but we do need to live through a psychological purging, and we can only heal, we can only become like functioning individuals in a very healthy sense if we go through this purge and profoundly understand what it is about and where our weaknesses and flaws lie as a species, And since our flaws are basically psychological in nature, our misaligned beliefs, because injustice is basically a belief that doesn't reflect equilibrium. The solution is rather simple. We just have to change our inner value systems. The world and the collective will just reflect that change as soon as we create it within ourselves. So basically, if all of this massive transformation is creating for all of us a world where we all of us can have our ways, where all of us can do with greater freedom all that we desire, well, first of all, the universe has to teach us what a healthy desire is and what an obsessive, destructive, and toxic desire is. So we can know the difference of what we do, and we can only uphold laws once we embody them, and they are very relevant in our inner structures, and that means life experience. That means having the same life view, the same philosophy, the same understanding of what it is. And empathy is so very important, because you only stop your negative actions once you know how those actions can affect another being in a very negative or even lethal manner. And that is why, if we add all the puzzle pieces together, this is what the universe is teaching us through these turmoils, crises, emotional ups and downs, hope followed by hopelessness, and then the same cycle returning over and over again. It is responsibilizing us. It is making sure that we never forget what pain, what injustice, what suffering, sorrow, misery feels like, so that we never ever do it to another human or any other sentient living being in the future that we're gonna have. It basically is not gonna gift us with an even better, with even a slightly better world or society if we don't deserve it. And we can only deserve it by proving to the divine intelligence that we are actually very, very, very responsible, and that a philosophy, a life view, an opinion, a conspiracy, a fantasy is not enough to turn us into killing machines. Whenever we have to threaten the integrity and life of another being, or its justice or fairness of its existence, just for the sake of our beliefs and opinions, well, that is the moment when we have to put a stop to whatever we believe in and doubt ourselves, doubt our opinions, doubt our visions, because something that is against life, justice, and harmony, that is toxic and that is not really human. And after we learn and embody all these lessons, at least a high percentage of everyone who is alive right now on the planet, well, then there is no reason anymore why solutions and, stepping into that very prosperous and fertile future where all of us can have a saying, where all of us can do whatever we desire, as I repeat, as long as our desires are healthy and respect the integrity of life and everything that we hold sacred. So basically, this is what we're co-creating with the universe. I honestly believe that this is the divine scheme. This is the big plan. This is the North Node in Gemini, so that we can finally make it. And Gemini, the twins, equality, seeing another being like an extension of yourself or another version of yourself, it doesn't matter. This is what we're learning to do, and this is wherever the universe is guiding us. So it's not going to be a very easy process, but I do believe that we can make it. So if this Saturn, an erratic Saturn, and the karmic influence of the eclipse is really dragging you down, if you feel like you're really falling into the rabbit hole again, then just remember that this is the future that we're creating. This death card, the Kali, it has to expose wherever the weaknesses and flaws are so that we can change it. So don't take any negativity, any mismanifestation, if we can call it like that, any, karmic disappointment where you feel that you weren't supported, weren't guided, weren't loved by the universe or the source. At this time, don't take it personally. It is not aimed at you. It is simply the big theme that all of us are in together. And remember, it is exactly that future where you can get what you want, where you can live your dreams that we are heading towards, but it is a future that we have to co-create, so it is all worth it. All pain, suffering, every tear shed, every desperate thought, every moment of sorrow is definitely gonna be worth it, because all of us are gonna have our chances in 2021 to start building and doing whatever we need to do and whatever we desire. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that at least it could shine a little bit of light and hope if you're feeling really down. And also, please remember that the universe is always flowing. Everything is a constant flow, so nothing actually lasts forever. And even if you're by any chance one of those very, very rare souls and people whose karma is blocked all throughout this life, because there is something like that. Yes, it is extremely rare, but there are actually some people who have the same karmic blockages and restrictions all their lives, for whom, even the moment of birth and the moment of death is just one big never-ending story where you just feel like a ghost stuck in the same movie over and over and over and over again each and every day. Even if you're this rare and unique soul, a person who is going through this, well, this is exactly a chance when the universe resets karma. So it's good news and a really powerful and massive potential for all of us, regardless of our situations. So don't lose hope. Stay in the frequency that tomorrow, each and every second of the future holds a new opportunity, even if it's like 0.1% chance that a powerful and massive change happens to you, enters your life, and it's gonna change your situation forever. Well, thank you again. Wish everyone a blessed and safe day. Until next time, bye for now.